Since the reveal of Avowed, an action RPG set in the same universe as the CRPG games Pillars of Eternity and Pillars of Eternity 2, we've been excited to see what awaits us in Eora. In this Avowed video, we'll go over what we know about the game's narrative, combat development changes, and what we could see in this first-person take on PoE that many players are anticipating. It's been a while since we've done a preview on Avowed, but there are a lot of new details, and we want to share what those are in case you haven't seen anything since our previous video. First announced about 3 years ago, Avowed was unveiled to be a first-person RPG by the same developers of Pillars of Eternity games, Obsidian. Having worked on the previous CRPGs, the studio looks to be stepping into a new direction with the franchise. Moving away from turn-based RPG combat and real-time with pause, Avowed will have a real-time action-based combat from the first-person perspective with magic as well as traditional weapons. Avowed will be set in the area of Eora known as the Living Lands, which is the same universe as the CRPG Pillars of Eternity. From what's been released trailer-wise, we know that the main character will be able to wield magic and is sent to the Living Lands as an envoy of Adir by the Emperor to find out about a plague that is impacting the land. Being able to command magic, the locals don't quite trust you upon first meeting, and here you'll need to show you're not the bad guy and get them to come over to your side via persuasion or force. Using both weapons and magic in combat means a whole range of possibilities. You won't be playing as a watcher in this iteration though, but you will still have some sort of soul connection, which we don't know a lot about currently. The setting of the Living Lands means a diverse world of flora and fauna. The environment is full of poisonous weeds and dense forests, but also dry mountainous regions. But it's not just the natural environment adventurers should keep an eye out for. From the footage shown, animals are also affected by the unique soul plague. This could mean they also have further abilities not normally found in the wild, opening up a host of problems that only players can solve. Whether that is by blade, by casting spells, persuasion, or coercion, or a combination of these things. Avowed's world is expected to be roughly the same size as Knights of the Old Republic 2 or the Outer Worlds if you want a more recent comparison. Avowed won't be open world, but will have interconnected open zones, and from what was shown at the Xbox Extended Game Showcase back in June, there will be plenty to explore which you can do at your own pace. Past trailers have also shown teases of deities from the Pillars of Eternity universe. A scene shows a castle displaying hanging banners on its walls with a symbol, which can also be seen on the player's sword. The symbol looks very similar to that of one of the deities known as Wodica. Another name she goes by is the Exiled Queen, who holds a particular importance in the Empire of Adir. This might give us some clues as to exactly when in time and where in Eora we will be focusing the Avowed's narrative. Being so prevalent in the trailer could mean we're at a time before Wodica is cast out. This could very well be a prequel to the Pillars of Eternity games, being set in the same world. It's still unclear if this will be a prequel or sequel to the series of games though, but it could also be its own story, hence not gaining the Pillars of Eternity in its title. Combat is in real time and looks very reminiscent of games such as the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim or the more recent Tainted Grail The Fall of Avalon, where you can cast magic with one hand and use a weapon in the other. In June, Obsidian released a gameplay trailer featuring swordsmen ready to ambush a lone figure stepping off a ship. It featured some double pistol fights, swords, bows, and axes. But dual-wielding weapons aren't the only things in the player's arsenal. Avowed also gives players the ability to wield magic in first person. There seem to be different types of magic to cast from what we've seen in the trailer. We may even see returning spells and abilities from Pillars of Eternity realized in first person. For instance, you can see a sword slash that looks like it could be the Paladin's Flames of Devotion with its whitish-yellow flames engulfing the blade. Or the Wizard's Fireball that has a longer cast time, as well as Pull of Eora, with a dark sphere that pulls enemies into its vortex. There also looks to be a melee attack that looks an awful lot like the Cypher's Soul Annihilation, as well as a charging move with a raised shield that reminds me of the fighter's ability Charge. Also teased on the game's Steam page is the ability to set traps by using your Grimoire, which seems to have a range of spells. But there are other less tactical ways to get rid of enemies, such as kicking them off a cliff, which reminds me of shoving enemies off high places in Baldur's Gate 3. Shared in a video celebrating 20 years of Obsidian, the Pillars of Eternity 2 and Outer Worlds developer dove into what the game used to be. The RPG was once slated to be a co-op multiplayer game, but has since changed scope. Studio head Fergus Urquhart explained in the video when looking back on 20 years of Obsidian that there were choices they felt good about and some felt not so good. Previously, they pushed Avowed as multiplayer in order to sell it better to publishers. However, they felt ultimately it wasn't the right direction for the game. The development of quests, narratives, and other elements were significantly shaped by the multiplayer component. Understandably, a multiplayer game has a different set of content compared to a solo experience. The game's director, Carrie Patel, described the 8-month transition period to a new direction as very hectic. Before Obsidian was acquired by Microsoft, they were independent. This influenced how the game was viewed and pitched. Urquhart explained asking for 50, 60, 70, 80 million from publishers meant they needed something to hook them in, and multiplayer made it interesting. This is also probably why we really hadn't gotten much of an update on Avowed until this year, when it appeared at the Xbox Game Showcase in June with a new trailer. Single-player games don't necessarily mean playing alone, though. The appeal of games like Dragon's Dogma 2 are putting players in situations where they can recruit their own party members who can act on their own or as directed, or the recent majorly successful Baldur's Gate 3, which is often amplified by the presence of a group of companions. Your main character may be designed for a specific build, but you can leverage the abilities of your party members to enhance combat strategies. Having a companion or two could help provide more flexible gameplay. We're excited to find out whether the party members will be commanded in combat or where they will rely on their own AI-driven combat, similar to games such as Dragon's Dogma's Pawn system, which I could see also working here. In an interview with PC Gamer, director Carrie Patel expressed that Avowed is very much a companion-focused game being integral to the story. They went on to say they are tied to the story, tied to your party, meaning your adventure will revolve around your companions. Being such a big part of your gameplay means that there have to be skills or upgrade systems as you get into more challenging fights. Companions will join you on your adventure with up to 2 at a time. One companion revealed already is the coastal Almawa called Kai, a battle-hardened ex-soldier and mercenary. From one trailer, we see Kai running into what looks to be a battle alongside others in the group. But there could be more races for companions such as human, dwarves, elves, godlike, and Orlan. Each race has its own attributes and subclass bonuses. For example, the coastal Alma has bonuses such as towering physique. It will be interesting to see how this will be adapted in combat in Avowed from Pillars of Eternity. As Avowed isn't a turn-based game, this leaves a lot open on how Obsidian plans to tackle companions and combat. Its first-person view may also shape how you interact with companions while in a fight, as not having an isometric view like in CRPGs means a different tact when it comes to skills. Adapting this to a first-person action RPG should be somewhat easy considering that the original Pillars of Eternity and Pillars of 2 games had real-time combat, which means that if there are casting times and attack times for abilities and skills, those can be implemented directly into first person and should work without too much change. I think it'll be extremely interesting to see how they implement some of these abilities and whether you can recognize them and whether they feel like the Pillars of Eternity abilities or not. In an interview with PC Gamer back in June, the developers shared your role will be set, playing as an Imperial envoy. You do, however, have control over personality, appearance, and philosophy. Race will only be human or elf though, so you won't get to choose from all the races you could in Pillars of Eternity. However, you won't be locked into a particular class with having several ability trees. This sounds like we'll have quite the flexibility to customize our character to play how we like, suiting multiple playstyles. As we also have weapon choices such as double pistols and swords, it'll be interesting to see how flexible and how quickly you can switch up your weaponry. If we look at the classes available in the Pillars of Eternity series, we can make some predictions of what kind of ability trees could appear in Avowed. Having seen abilities in the gameplay already from many different Pillars of Eternity classes, I think it's safe to assume most, if not all, classes will be returning in Avowed, and these are Barbarian, Chanter, Cypher, Druid, Fighter, Monk, Paladin, Priest, Ranger, Rogue, and Wizard. Multi-classing also opens up a mix of different playstyles, but since we're not locked to classes, multi-classing might not be there in a traditional sense. The mixing and matching class abilities should still be a thing, as it was in Pillars of Eternity 2 to some degree. Final thoughts. Avowed sounds like it'll be an interesting experience, attracting not only fans of the Pillars of Eternity franchise, but also those who are enamored by the mix of magic and weapon playstyles. Being a first-person RPG will give it a fresh take on a well-established universe, and the change from multiplayer to single-player should allow the game to focus more on its narrative. And from what's been teased of the game so far, we're in for an adventure to maybe a time we haven't seen before in Eora, which could provide a lot of new stories. Hopefully Avowed will have just as good of a narrative as its CRPG counterparts, and will open up new experiences to players within the Pillars universe, being experienced in a whole new way and first person. The exact release date hasn't been announced, but it is slated for 2024 for Xbox Series X and S and PC. So we'll keep you updated with more information on Avowed as we gain more later on next year. What do you guys think so far? Has it been a while since you've heard anything on Avowed? Did this catch you up? What do you think of it? Do you like the change going from multiplayer to single player? This is a big change in my opinion, one that I think I like. I like the focus more on story-driven and immersion. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below.